Hey guys, so we're going to start our first read aloud. This is a beautiful book called How High the Moon, and it's written by Karyn Parsons. Okay, it's my front page. It gives me all the information I need to know, and then on my back page. So, the sadness she wore only moments before had been replaced by something newly roused. I was feeling it too, a low, boiling anger. In the Jim Crow South, 12-year-old Ella spends her days fishing and running around the small town of um, Alcolu, South Carolina, with her cousins, Henry and Myrna. But life is not always so sunny for Ella, who gets bullied for her lighter skin tone and whose mother is away pursuing a jazz singer career up north in Boston. So Ella is ecstatic when her mother invites her to visit for Christmas. She doesn't expect to uncover new truths about her mother, the father she never knew, and her family most unlikely history. After a life-changing trip, she returns south and is shocked by the news that her schoolmate, George, has been arrested for the murder of two local white girls. Bittersweet and eye-opening, How High the Moon is a stunning and timeless debut novel about a girl finding herself in a world all but determined to hold her down. All right, so we're going to start reading this, and we're going to read it chapter by chapter, one chapter a day. Hopefully I'll get to post one each day. I'd love for you guys to look at the links that I posted above, though. One of the links is going to be somebody read just a little quick blurb from the book, but you can hear the rich Southern South Carolina accent that she has that I cannot do justice, so I won't even try. And then the other two videos, Miss Karyn Parsons actually talks to you, and she talks to you about how she created the characters, which is huge. All right, so chapter 1 of How High the Moon. This is kind of weird. I've never really read an outline, a book out loud like this. So there are years that ask questions and years that answer, by Zora Neale Hurston. Chapter 1, Ella. What was I thinking? Leaving home with no shoes? Running down our driveway and onto the packed and dry dirt road? I hardly noticed my bare feet. I'd heard Granny calling after me, but the words didn't make sense until I'd already turned off into the woods, towards the creek, where the fallen blackberry brambles and knobby tree limbs stabbed and scraped. Ella! Your shoes! Your shoes! She hollered after me. I tore through the woods, my legs trying to keep pace with my pounding heart. Later, at home, I'd discovered deep scratches and cuts covering my ankles and the soles of my feet. One cut was so deep, I'd leave a trail of blood across the porch and clear on into the kitchen. But I couldn't feel none of that now. There was just my good news. I was finally going to live in Boston with Mama. I pushed a low poplar branch out of my way and arrived at Creek's clearing just before the water's edge. Now, I don't know what a poplar branch is, so I'm going to take my book, my Reader's Response Journal, and I'm going to write it down, poplar branch, to remind me to go look that up later. Okay, that's a Stop and Jot. I'd almost lost my hat twice on the way to the creek. It blew clear off my head. Dirt and broken leaves clung to the dark felt, making it dusty and gray, and I beat at them until they finally came loose. No one in Clarendon County had a hat like mine, a Stetson Cavalry. I don't know what that is, and I want to get that picture in my head. So I'm going to write that down too. Stetson Cavalry. Now, if I wasn't doing a read aloud with you, I would actually look it up right now. I would go on my Google and I would look it up so that I had that picture automatically in my head. I'd found it in the woods, caked in a layer of dry brown earth. The black felt didn't have a single nick or worn patch. The gold braid round the brim wasn't frayed at all. I'd taken it home and cleaned it up good as new. Still, some folks took issue with me, a girl, sporting such a hat. I paid them no mind. I was my own boss and did things my way, just like my mama. I spotted Henry below, ankle deep in the water with his trousers rolled up, bouncing his fishing line up and down. I don't really know what trousers mean, but I'm guessing it's a type of pants. He insisted it made the big fish take the worm for a sick fish that was easy prey. Heck, how would he know? He never did catch nothing. Henry, I called, waving the telegram high over my head. Come stay with me in Boston, is what it said. Stay. She didn't say visit. She said come stay. Still, I knew it was a trial of sorts. Mama always said that with all the work she had to do, it'd be hard for her to look after me. I was going to need to prove to her that I had grown up enough to help take care of myself. It wouldn't be fair to you, Ella, she said before, but one day you'll be big enough. And now, that one day had come. I'd show Mama that I could cook and clean and even make life easier for her. I was grown now. I wouldn't get in the way. Henry stopped bouncing the line and squinted up at me. With one hand on his hip and the other shielding his eyes from the sun, he jutted his chin towards the telegram. What's that? I'm going to Boston. I ran down to him, slapped the telegram on his chest, and flopped down on the grass. The air had the crisp snap of autumn and its perfectly clear blue skies. Everything smelled clean. I closed my eyes and felt the warm sun on my face. Wait, what do you mean you're going there? To Boston. Just hearing that out loud made me spring to my feet and do a little dance. Boston was nothing like South Carolina. Up there, colored folks could go anywhere they wanted. And you didn't have to wait for church to dress in fancy clothes. Fancy was just life. There were all kinds of people from all over the world, Italian, Chinese, French, and they brought their food with them too. You could eat Chinese food in Boston. Everything was big and everything was real clean and nice. People there were sophisticated. My mama had been living up there for so long that when she came to visit us in Alcaloo, you could see the difference in her a mile away. She'd be walking up the road and folks would take note before they even made out the features of her face. I mean, sure, she had always stood out from the rest, had always been different from the other folks in our little town, but now they gave it a name. She was a city girl. Can you believe it? I spun around, did a fan kick. An envelope fell out of the side pocket of my overalls. Oh, shoot, Henry! I handed him the letter. I almost forgot. This is for you. Henry's face beamed when he looked at the letter and recognized the handwriting. His daddy had been fighting in the war for almost 2 years, and Henry missed him something awful. He saved every letter his daddy sent, and sometimes he'd even sit down on his bed and read 'em all, from the first one to the last, like they was a book. Thanks, I'll read it later. He tucked it into his front pocket, and he did his best to hide his smile. Getting a letter from his daddy made him happier than anything. But Henry didn't want to make me feel bad that I didn't have a daddy to send me letters. I pointed to the place he'd stashed the envelope. Maybe Mama's ready to tell me about my daddy, I said. Granny already said he's in California. Henry sat down on a tall, dry rock in the creek and rubbed his heels on its rough surface. Yeah, but that's all I know. I want to know why they ain't together no more, and why he went to California in the first place. I stuck my toes in the cool water along the edge of the creek and wrapped it around them. A small, whoops, and wrapped them around a small rock, trying to lift it. I know I used to say I thought my daddy was doing some secret spy work for the war, but now I'm starting to think. What? Henry asked. Don't laugh, I warned. He raised his eyebrows, a grin already twisting the corners of his mouth. I took a breath. I'm starting to seriously think that my daddy is Cab Calloway. Henry grabbed his belly and teetered back and forth like an egg on a plate. He almost fell over into the creek laughing. What? You mean the jazz singer Cab Calloway? You mean Minnie the Moocher Cab Calloway, Henry hooted. Ella, you's crazy. Cut it out. I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. He's in the jazz world, like Mama. He looks like he could be my daddy, all light complected and all, and now he's off in California, making movies. Henry looked like he might bust a gut. Okay, laugh all you want, but how come he ain't got no pictures of my daddy? Nobody does. What's that about? It's 'cause they think I'll tell everyone, and then all the gossip papers will be on our doorstep. But when Mama sees that I'm not a little girl anymore, that I can keep a secret, she'll open up. You watch. Henry nodded and shrugged. He wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and caught his breath. So, you going to be up in Boston for Christmas? He asked. I pointed to the telegram. She said she'll send for me in a couple of months. That's 2, right? So that'll be before Christmas. Yeah. How long you reckon you gonna stay? He was staring down at my telegram, reading it over carefully and frowning. Well, once I show Mama how mature I've become, that I can take care of myself pretty good and not get in her hair none, I think. And I stopped. I'd been so full of excitement of being with Mama, her sweet vanilla smell against my cheek, that I hadn't thought about how it might all hit Henry. I hadn't been thinking of the whole picture. Henry and I were cousins, but it was common knowledge that we were also best of friends. We were only 1 year apart, me being 11 and him 12. He knew me better than anyone, and it went the same way for me about him. Thick as thieves, Poppy would say. We'd both been raised by Granny and Poppy for most of our lives, just us and our cousin Myrna. Ever since she turned 14, she didn't want to have nothing to do with us, but Henry and I had never been separated. And now the look on his face said it all. Of course, I'll have to come back to get all of my stuff, I said, and then I guess I'll come back to visit sometimes. What stuff? He scowled at me. Oh, I don't know, Henry, but I'll be back, I said. You're really going to go live up there, up in Boston? He held the fishing pole in one hand and scratched wildly over his whole scalp with the other. I think it's time, I said. I think Mama thinks it's time. Where'll you go to school? He asked. He stopped scratching and his hand on his hip. There's schools in Boston too, Henry. But you don't know nobody, he said, looking into the water and started bouncing the fishing line again. I'll meet new folks. At my new school there'll be... Who's gonna feed the chickens and feed Bear and... Y'all don't need me for all that. Come on, Henry. Just seems like you're acting like this ain't a good thing. Now, come on, Ella, I never said that. Then be happy for me. What? What are you talking about? I am. He finally stopped bouncing the line and looked up from the creek. We stared at each other for a moment, silent. Neither one of us knew what to say. I finally looked away, down at the gurgling water under Henry's feet. A single white feather was balanced on its surface. Henry looked down and saw it too. We watched as the creek carried it past us over the rocks and away until it disappeared around a curve of trees and brush. Henry read the telegram one last time. He lifted the fishing pole from the water, stood it upright, and let it lean against his body while he folded the piece of paper in half. Carefully matching the corners, a suspender fell from his bony shoulder as he folded it again and then once more. "Aw, you gonna miss me, Henry?" I teased, and I smiled at my cousin, then grabbed hold of his fishing pole and shoved him aside. I was better at fishing than Henry had ever been, and he knew it. I always caught more fish than he did. He was a good teacher, though. Heck, he had taught me everything I knew. Still, it irked him that he never seemed to have the same good luck. Made a point of reminding me I had learned my skills whenever he could. He shrugged. I leaned over and I gave him a poke in the ribs when he pushed my hand. I poked the other side where I hit a tickly spot, and he let out a short, unexpected laugh. I gave a tickle to his armpit before he could block me, and he laughed some more. Soon I was poking and tickling him all over, and we were both laughing. "Stop!" He waved his hands and shook his head. He was trying to fight his smile. I stopped and looked into his face, making him meet my eyes. When he finally did, he said, "Yeah, of course. Of course I'll miss you." He handed the neatly folded telegram to me. "I think it's great, Ella. I'm happy for you. What do you think you're going to do there?" "I don't know. I'm sure Mama will think of some fun stuff for us to do." I waded out a little farther into the cold creek. "Maybe we'll go to a restaurant." "Yeah," Henry said. He was trying to smile for me, but still chewing on his lip and frowning a little. "Heck, just getting to stay with her at her house will be great, you know." I tried not to show it, but the thought made my heart jump. "Wonder where she lives," he said. "What her house is like. You think it's big?" "I don't know. Granny says Boston's a big city. That when the cities are big, the houses are small. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. Either way, don't matter to me." Something yanked on the line. "Henry, grab it!" I shoved the line into his hands. He staggered a bit, battling the strength of the fish. The pole curved. Henry held on tight. As he reeled it out of the water, a 2-foot-long, largemouth bass flailed about wildly. "Whoa!" I heard myself say. "Can you get it?" Henry's legs straddled the rocky creek's edge while his feet gripped the jagged stones. The muscles of his skinny arms tightened, struggling to keep hold of the big fish. "Oh, man," he exclaimed, face twisted tight. Finally, he had it high enough out of the water that he was able to fling it over to the rocks near me, where it thrashed some more. "Dang, thing's really moving," he shouted, half at me, half at the fish. He kept reaching for it, then drawing back, unsure of how to attack. "You just gotta grab it, Henry," I shouted. "I know." The largemouth escaped his grip a few times before Henry finally managed to free the hook from its mouth and tossed the fish into the bucket he'd brought from the house. "Nice job," I told him. He laughed and wiped the sweat from his face with his handkerchief. "Man," he pounded, "it's big." "Sure is." A large cloud blocked the sun, giving us a needed moment of shade. "Just think, Henry, after I've been up there a little while, you can come up and visit." "You can come visit all the time," I said. He thought about it a moment. "I'd like to see Boston," he said. "Of course you would. Get out of this boring old place." We watched as the bass's thrashing slowed, then stopped altogether, its gaze fixed on somewhere far away. After reeling in his big catch, we were ready to head home. I think if I had my choice, I'd definitely be a Tuskegee Airman. I stopped to lean against a tree and pull a burr from the bottom of my foot. Getting to fly them fighter planes? You kidding me? With my arms outstretched, I flew through the woods. They're airmen. Ain't no girls flying fighter planes, said Henry, trying to keep up with me. I'd be the first one then. I called over my shoulder at Henry, only half paying attention to where I was headed, so it wasn't until I was already close to him that I saw the boy. Sitting in the V of a large oak tree was a white boy I had never seen before. Must have been about 14 years old. He had the look of someone who had just smelled something bad, and there were little craters on his cheeks. There weren't any white folks living on this side of the tracks except for the Parkers who owned the local store. Folks passed through, but it was unusual to see a white boy just plop down in the woods like that. "The first what?" he asked. I looked down. "Oh, nothing, sir," I said. Henry was quickly by my side, walking fast. His hands at his side motioned me to keep on walking. I followed Henry, but the boy jumped from the tree and began to follow us. "Where'd you get that hat, girl?" he asked, thumping the back of my Stetson. I was stepping on thorns, but didn't dare stop. "I found it," I answered. "Stole it?" he barked in my ear, then thumped my hat again. "No, sir," I said. I was just trying to move fast, but he was moving faster and with little effort. He walked alongside me, smiling now. "I said, where'd you get that hat, girl?" I kept walking. "Answer me, girl." "Sir?" I didn't know why he kept asking me that or what he wanted me to say back. I'd already told the truth. Henry was leading us to the road. We'd be there soon, and then out in the open, the boy might go on home. "How old are you?" he asked, flipping my braid, then thumping my hat once more. "11, sir," I whispered. Thump. I saw the road out in front of us and felt relief flood my body. I couldn't wait no more. I ran, took off for the road and down it for home. Henry was right on my heels. "Hey!" I heard the boy call. I don't think he followed, but I couldn't be sure. I didn't look back. All right, guys, that is the first chapter in our new read aloud. Okay, How High the Moon by Karyn Parsons. What do you guys think? I'm curious. All right. So remember, do stop and jots even while I read aloud to you. Tuskegee Airmen. Do you know what that is? If you don't know what that is, I'd like for you to write it down so that you can remember to look it up. Okay? And don't forget when reading, always feel free to stop, to jot, look things up, and then come back. You don't have to wait to look it up, especially when you're reading on your own. Or here in our case, you could just hit pause. All right, guys, I'm excited to do this read aloud with you. It looks like it's going to take about half an hour a chapter, maybe. But read it on your own time. Listen on your own time. All right, guys, see you tomorrow. Gotta learn how to turn this off.